If you'll please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And before we get started, I would like to remind those in the audience to please silence your cell phones or turn them off, since we are on live feed. We will want to remind the audience that we will be hearing all of our zoning and text change and special exception cases today are coming to us for the first time. We will hear a staff reading of the case by the planning staff and then ask the applicant to provide a brief overview of the request. We will then give the opportunity for anyone in the audience to speak for or against the request. And then the commissioners will have any needed discussion on the case. Once a motion is made and seconded by the commission, a vote will take place and a recommendation will be rendered. The case will then go back to the planning department for their independent recommendation. If a favorable recommendation is given, then the case is forwarded to the city council with 2 independent recommendations. If the planning department makes a recommendation for denial, the applicant will have 10 days from the receipt of a letter stating the denial to notify the clerk of council that they are requesting to be placed on the city council's agenda. The City Council of Columbus will hold a public meeting called the first reading, and the said council shall consider the case, review PAC and planning department recommendations, and hear discussion on the matter. And then the council will make a final decision at a second meeting called the second reading. We do have minutes that were sent out to the commissioners for our June 20th meeting. If we do not have any changes or additions that need to be made to these minutes, we can submit them as approved, but I do want to ask commissioners, are there any changes or additions that need to be made? No? I see none. So we will submit those as approved, and thank you for that. So we've got 2 cases today. We'll go ahead and dive into our very first one, which is REZN-06-18-18-1137. And this is a request to rezone 57.3 acres of land located at Old Guard Road. The current zoning is RE, which is Residential Estate 1, and the proposed zoning is RO, Residential Office. The proposed use is multifamily, and George Mize is the applicant. This property is located in Council District 2, Davis. Mr. Renfro, if you'll read the staff report for us, please.
Yes, ma'am. General land use, inconsistent, planning area A. Current land use designation is vacant, undeveloped. Future is public, institutional. Compatible with existing land uses, yes. Environmental impacts. The property does not lie within the floodway and floodplain area. The developer will need an approved drainage plan prior to issuance of a site development permit if a permit is required. Property is serviced by all city services. There will be no traffic impact. The site shall meet the codes and regulations of the Columbus Consolidated Government for commercial usage. No school impact. The buffer requirements, the site shall include a Category C buffer along all property lines bordered by the RO zoning district. The 3 options under Category C are 20 feet with a certain amount of canopy trees, understory trees, and shrubs or ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet, 10 feet with a certain amount of shrubs, ornamental grasses per 100 linear feet, and a wood fence or masonry wall, 30 feet undisturbed natural buffer. No response from Fort Benning or DRI recommendation. 55 property owners within a half mile of the subject property were notified of the rezoning. The planning department received 1 inquiry about the rezoning. Additional information. Veterans Parkway Moon Road to Hancock Road is currently under construction and is set to be complete by the middle of 2019.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, are there any questions regarding the staff report? Mr. Dudley.
Now, that area is right next to a couple of schools. How is it that you get no traffic impact for the development? I mean, I can see that Veterans is being expanded, but Old Guard Road itself seems like there'd be a very big traffic impact, and you say no impact on schools. I guess, what do you mean by no impact on schools?
I think the applicant in his presentation can cover that, but just as far as our, from what we noticed, the traffic will be going opposite of school traffic, both in the morning and in the evening. So there's not going to be a traffic impact from the development there. As far as school, I believe there's going to be roughly 9.
I can address that question,
Okay.
I think, with the traffic analysis.
Okay, let me, so before we get into the applicant speaking, are there any other questions amongst the commissioners for this staff report? All right, so we've got the applicant, if you'll state your name and address.
All right. Good morning. My name is George Mize. I'm with the law firm of Page Cranham. I'm, of course, your applicant, but I represent the developer, which is Greystone Properties, certainly one of the most well-respected local developers, having developed over 4,000 multifamily units and 2,000 single-family lots. This developer specializes in high-end upscale residential developments. The managing member of this business, Greystone Properties, Mr. Will White, had to be out of town and couldn't be with us today. Our surveyors and engineers are Moon Meeks, Mason, and Vinson, again, one of the most well-respected surveying engineering firms in the region. And the traffic, we engaged a traffic engineer, Wilburn Engineering, Mr. Vern Wilburn, out of Noonan, Georgia. Vern has many years of experience and has worked with dozens of cities in this state and throughout the region, and has done a substantial amount of work with Columbus himself. The first slide we're looking at is the site plan, just to give you an idea of the layout and what we're proposing to do. We're seeking to rezone 57.3 acres of land located due north of Veterans Memorial Middle School, North Columbus Elementary School, and Northside High School, just off Old Guard Road, and we're going to rezone it from RE1 to RO for multifamily development. The proposed development is consistent and compatible with surrounding land uses. To the west and adjacent to the property is Old Town, which has a substantial amount now, or certainly in the future will have a substantial amount of multifamily. Also in the immediate vicinity, you've got other apartment complexes, Walden Pond Apartments, Summit Point Luxury Apartments and Villas. You've got Greystone at the crossings. You've also got Lower Water Apartments. So you've got plenty of apartments in the area to have consistent use. What my client's proposing to do is to put in a high-end upscale multifamily development. The proposed development will be very similar to what other developments Mr. White has done in the area, including Greystone Farms Reserve, Greystone Summit, and Greystone at Columbus Park. But just to give you an idea of what the quality of the development we're talking about. That's Greystone at Columbus Park, that's Greystone Summit. This is Columbus Park again, and this is a picture of obviously the exercise room at River Chase in Phoenix City. But just to give you an idea of the quality of product that Greystone does, and I think you'll agree with me, we're talking about very attractive developments. The specific product that they're proposing to put in this case is going to be similar to what they're doing right now in Knoxville, Tennessee at Greystone Point. Also similar to what they're doing in Gulf Breeze, Florida at Greystone Summit. And also the most recent one in Leesburg, Georgia, which is just north of Albany, Georgia, at Greystone in Oakland. But you get an idea of what we're talking about and the quality of the development we're going to be doing. The project will certainly be well buffered in accordance with the UDO. In addition, because of the dramatic topography of this particular property and what Mr. White told me specifically is he might want to do something special, is he's proposing to develop this property at much less density than the RO classification would allow. Currently, he plans to put in 256 units, which is about 15% of what the UDO would allow. And although the reduction in density is due primarily to the dramatic topography, it's also consistent with this developer's development patterns of putting in high-scale, less dense developments. In anticipation of traffic questions or concerns, we did engage a traffic engineer to study the situation to see what, if any, impact the development might have on the transportation network. Consistent, we think, with what the staff reported, the traffic analysis concluded there would be no substantial impact to the transportation network. In fact, delay times would be increased by 0.6 seconds. And the level of service both at the intersection of Old Guard Road and Veterans Parkway, as well as American Way and Veterans Parkway would remain the same. I think it's a C, a B, and an A, depending on the peak time that you're talking about. And what John was talking about is like two ships in the night. In the morning, as the school traffic's coming in, the apartment traffic's leaving, and in the afternoon, when the apartment traffic's coming home, school traffic's already gone. So I think that's kind of what John was alluding to a few minutes ago. As far as school capacity is concerned, we believe the capacity is sufficient to handle the number of children that might be generated by this development, according to planning staff, and I think they get their numbers from the school district.
You can count on about 15 children being generated as a result of this development. And according to my conversation with an official at the Muskogee County School District, this property would be serviced by North Columbus Elementary, Veterans Memorial Middle, as well as Northside High School. And I've got a chart here showing you capacity enrollments, okay? And as you can see right off the bat, the middle school and the high school have plenty of capacity to deal with the 15 children. And you've got the North Columbus Elementary School exceeding its technical capacity by a little bit. I talked to the officials at the Muskogee County School District, and what they say is the fact that you've got enrollment in excess of technical capacity is certainly not unusual. And when it's this amount, that's not going to raise any red flags or any concerns. He didn't really see it as a problem. And what you've got 15 kids spread out over 3 schools, 12 grades, numerous classrooms. We believe the impact of the schools are going to be negligible. From a public infrastructure standpoint, all the public facilities and infrastructure are present and at the site. There'll be no negative impact to those facilities and infrastructure, and the city won't have to have any additional investment in that regard. The development will have a very positive economic impact to the city and its citizens, including obviously the creation of construction jobs during the 18-month build-out process, together with substantial increase in business for local suppliers, subcontractors, electricians, and others that support the construction industry. And then, of course, once the development is done, you'll have permanent jobs, and you also have permanent business created for third-party vendors that are providing services like maintenance, carpet cleaning and replacement, landscaping, painting, just to name a few of the trades. There'll also be a substantial increase in the tax base for ad valorem tax purposes, thereby, again, providing an economic return to the city without affecting or adversely affecting in any material way, any infrastructure, or requiring any additional investment on the city's part. In this particular case, this is pretty dramatic. In this particular case, we anticipate property taxes going from $5,300 a year to about $400,000 a year. So we're talking about a very substantial increase in tax revenues to the city. In addition, as far as sales taxes go, the city will have a boon, at least on the front end. I mean, you have initial surge in sales tax receipt when you have the purchase of millions of dollars of construction materials. We believe our application and request meet all the requirements for rezoning. The RO classification is certainly consistent and compatible with surrounding land uses. All public facilities and infrastructure are located at the site. There'll be no negative impact to those facilities and infrastructure. And per our traffic analysis, not going to be negative impact to the traffic transportation network. We believe this development has great benefits to this community, both in job creation, and tax revenue generation. Therefore, we request you approve the application and recommend approval to council. I'd be happy to try to answer any questions.
Commissioners, are there any questions for Mr. Mize? Mr. Dudley.
Could you put the diagram back up on the screen?
Which
The one showing the roads.
Show them, I'm sorry.
Showing the roads, the first one that you had
Okay,
up.
yeah, sure.
Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. You talked about, as far as the traffic, about ships passing in the night. The way the roads are set up, it looks like everybody coming from outside to going to the schools turns on Old Guard Road and then turns left to go into the schools. And they would have to cross all the traffic coming out from people living in the development. So it seems like there would be, if the road were going up the other side and people coming from Veterans would turn right to go to the schools, it seems like there wouldn't be any issue with traffic, but I can just
I see what you're saying. I just, I don't know that the traffic generated at the time periods you're talking about. I really not even, the schools are staggered as to when they open, is my understanding. Mm-hmm. And I don't have the specifics, but I think like the high school opens early, and the middle school opens, and then the elementary school opens. So you'll have staggered times anyway. So I hear what you're saying. I just don't think our traffic engineer thought that was going to be a problem. An unreasonable problem. And I don't really know what you would do to alleviate that, but I do hear what you're saying. But again, according to the traffic study, you're where they can analyze situations at intersections, really, there's not going to be any negative impact.
I'm certainly not a traffic engineer, but I would think at least you'd need a couple of traffic lights to handle all the people turning left across. But
I mean, if a traffic light were to be required, I think the planning department would require it, but I can't imagine that would reach the level of needing a traffic light.
Mr. Reese?
Yes, quick question. Thank you for being here. Looking at the area shot of this entire area from, of course, high up in the sky, this is a largely undeveloped area with, look like a mining operation about a half a mile away to the left, but there are no other accessible roads. As this area continued to develop due to people coming in and new construction, are there any plans to potentially widen this road or look for additional access points? I mean, I looked at it, it seemed like it would be tremendously difficult to find another access point to this particular area. And by laws of necessity, you have to have access to major roads.
Well, and that's a really good point. And what we have, a 60-foot easement, okay? And what we're going to do is put in a public road through that easement and then dedicate it to the city. And of course, we'll have to work with the school district on that. There's also been some discussions to the east, taking a road through Georgia Crown's property. I understood that that happened several years ago and that there was some, they weren't told no. Now, that's not going to be anything we do because we're adequately serviced by what's there.
Right.
And then also there might be some opportunities through Old Town to the east. But again, that's not anything we've talked to them about, not anything we need.
And one follow-up question, the left turn that we see, is that indeed a left turn or would that just be a very sharp curve or?
Sharp curve.
Okay, so there are no plans to extend Old Guard, I guess,
Correct.
continuing, that would be west or east?
North.
No,
North,
okay.
west.
At least not from, Teddy, not from our perspective, no. We really have all we need to access our property.
Okay. All right.
Now, you know, the property owners to the north, I think it's the, Edge's property, the Edge Estate property. You know, if they wanted to develop that property, obviously they'd have to extend the roads into their property, put in cul-de-sacs or loop roads or whatever they have to do, because it's hard for me to show you guys, but as I understand it, the Edge is on everything to the north and to the east, so they probably could put in some kind of road access down to, you know, loop road down to Veterans Parkway, whatever they could do, but it would be incumbent on each developer to come up with their own access.
And in addition to the required buffer, do you know if they plan to put in any fence or anything to separate from the school district's property?
I don't know that they are. And they've got so much acreage there that they could just leave it natural buffers and have plenty of room left over.
Okay.
Because, again, you're talking about 57 acres and he's only planning to put 256 units on that. And again, that's about 15% of what would ordinarily be allowed
So
under UDO.
this white space that we're looking at, does that represent the entire acreage or is that
Yes.
just a developed area?
That's the tire acre.
That's the entire acreage, okay.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant from the commissioners? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak in favor of this proposal? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to come forward and speak against it? You have a question? You'll need to come up to the microphone. If you'll come to the mic and state your name and address, please.
How y'all doing today? Sorry I was a little late, but I live in the
I need to get let me get your name and address first.
Anthony Sullivan, and my address is Avery Park, you know, the subdivision Avery Park.
Sure.
So, do you need the full address or not really?
You're fine. That's fine.
Okay. Well, the reason why I came here is because they sent us this notice.
Okay.
And it's plain, I could plainly see the rezone area, but I had a question about the big circle they put on the page because it looks like something is going to affect in that area. If y'all have this paper, if y'all need me to bring it up to you?
No, we actually have that. Mr. Renfro, you want to help?
When we send out the notifications, the center parcel is the parcel that's actually getting, or piece of property, that's the actual parcel that's going to be redeveloped. And the circle is all of the houses that are part of the notification process. Sometimes that's 300 feet, sometimes it's 1 mile. So you receive that letter because in this case, you were half a mile from that piece of property.
Now, I want to make sure he's up here for the right case. Is that the letter that he
It
is?
is.
Okay, I just
Yep.
want to make sure he was up here for the right case.
Yes.
Yeah, see, we stay.
No,
I don't believe that's
I think that's the wrong, if he said Ivy Park, that's,
So it's the,
This is, I think he's up here for the next case, if he lives in Ivy Park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's confusing is they're on the same road.
I know. So, and it is confusing, so let me apologize to you for it being confusing. We've got two cases we're going to hear today, and the one you're concerned about is coming up in just a minute. So if you'll take a seat, well, I'll make sure and let you come up the next go around.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
ma'am.
Yes, sir.
As a point of clarity, though, I do want him to understand the answer that was given because it's not going to change. Based upon policies that we have to follow, we have to give notification for a certain area.
Right.
So that big circle represents the area of people that we have to give notice to. So it's not going to impact you directly. We just have to give you notice to let you know. The area that's going to be impacted is the area that is in the
In that
center
circle.
in the white. So if that alleviates your concern, I don't know, you may not even have to get up next time because I think you just wanted the answer to that question, right?
Right.
And so that's the answer to your question. So no, it's not the entire circle. It's
Well,
just the portion in the center.
That,
All right?
Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
sir.
I feel like there needs to be some, I mean, the area that's in the circle, we consider it to be the impacted area. I think that's a more fair statement. If he lives within that circle, we're saying to him, your property could be affected.
Correct.
Okay.
By the notice that we have to give. Exactly.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, if he
Yeah.
lives in that circle, I don't want him to think he's not going to be impacted, because he
Right,
very well
right.
could be.
Right.
Okay. Okay, so let's get back to the case that we're on. I had asked if there was anybody that wanted to speak in favor, and if there was anyone who wanted to speak against, and I believe we do not have anybody coming forward. So if commissioners, if there are no other questions, do I hear a motion for this particular case? Mr. Reese.
As it relates to matter REZN 0618-1137, a request to rezone 57.3 acres of land located at Old Guard Road, currently zoned as residential estate 1, proposed zoning residential office, and the proposed use multifamily, with George Mize as the applicant. I move that we approve the request as submitted.
And we have a second. All of those in favor for approval of this, please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is unanimous. So this will go forward with a recommendation for approval. Thank you. So that will bring us to our next case, which is REZN-06-18-1169. And this is a request to rezone 40 acres of land located at 9056 Veterans Parkway. The current zoning is residential estate 1, RE1, residential estate 1. The proposed zoning is RO, which is residential office, and the proposed use is a life plan community. Joel Womack is the applicant, and this property is located in Council District 6, Allen. Mr. Renfro, if you'll read the staff report.
The applicant's not here this morning, so
Okay, so we'll table this.
table this till August the 1st.
Okay, so since we are going to table it and we do have a resident that came forward, if you'll just sit tight, when we wrap this up, I'm going to have someone talk to you. All right? Do we have any other business that we need to bring before us? I don't see anything on the agenda.
No, ma'am, that's it.
Okay, so thank you for your attendance, and we are adjourned.